What's going on, folks? It's D. White, founder of JustBlackThoughts.com. I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to do some grading. Just kind of sit with me. You know, if you want to do some work, it's just a video watching me work. There'll be some voiceovers, so you'll see some of my reactions. I'm grading some of my sophomore essays. Oh, grading. It is one of the staples of being an educator, especially as an English teacher. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of grading, I've got to emphasize the preparation that goes into setting up the space to be an effective, healthy, and focused grader. Just like telling the kids, hey, how do you set up a healthy reading space, homework space for you to focus and get your work done and not be distracted? Same goes for grading. So as you can see, I'm eating, as in have snacks. Have blueberries, chips, have your water near, your kombucha, your tea. It is important for you to stay healthy, making healthy choices, and being mindful of mindless eating. We are expending a lot of brain energy as we are grading. So get some healthy snacks next to you. All right. Next, I don't know about you. Some people like to play music. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I make sure not to have music with words because I'll start singing and then I'll distract myself with finding the best verse, and then I'm singing Whitney Houston, and then I'm rapping Tupac. So I try to do lo-fi beats, mostly instrumentals. Just something playing smoothly in the background, not too loud, not too much thumping in my ear. All right, just something to keep me going. Also to help me develop a rhythm. I also try to set a timer on my phone. I try to keep my phone away and out of sight until I hear the timer go off. For me, at this age, I can maybe do an hour max of grading at a time. I'm not one of those teachers that blast through my grades and my papers. I try to take my time with my essays to make sure I'm giving kids the proper, succinct feedback that they need, as opposed to trying to write something for every single line they type, or just leaving one comment where it doesn't give them really much to chew on or to develop their voice and their writing over time. I cannot stress enough, make sure you set the space up for yourself to be a good grader. Food, music, timer. Now, in terms of the grading itself, what I like to start with when my students have written their essays, and this is for my sophomores, seniors, as well as when I was teaching middle school once upon a time. For every major project, the kids turn in a self-evaluation. Why, you ask? Because it helps them identify what they think they did well in their writing, and also it becomes this opportunity for metacognition. No, the goal is not to make a young person self-conscious or self-critical of their work. It's the opposite. It's to make them self-aware and self-accountable and proud of the work that they're turning in. For example, these self-evaluation paragraphs tend to go at the bottom of their essays for all their major projects, whether it's a visual project, essay project. It's an opportunity for them to tell me what they're excited about in terms of writing, as well as tell me what they think an area of development is. Now, do I downgrade them when they tell me where the paper kind of struggles or falters? No, it's very honest of them. And it also becomes a reference point for them for future essays to say, hey, I wasn't great with my thesis in the last essay, but I really want to work on it for this next assignment. With the self-evaluation, I don't give a word limit. I tell the students, do what you need. I tell them, hey, whatever grade you want, this is an opportunity for you to make an argument. So the self-evaluation becomes another opportunity for kids to develop their argumentation skills, which is awesome. I tell the kids, I don't give grades. Y'all earn the grades. And with that self-evaluation, I also provide a rubric. I try to keep the rubric pretty similar, pretty standard throughout the year. I'll add some stuff here and there as we kind of go through the year and kids pick up skills. I try to stack on some skills or tasks for them to kind of improve on and for them to progress their writing. I try not to make it a moving carrot. I don't want the kids to lose motivation. They feel like I keep moving the goalpost, so to speak, with changing drastic changes on the rubric. With that rubric, underneath their self-evaluation paragraph or page, they'll mark and highlight what they think they did on their rubric. And most of my essays for the last couple of years have been on Google Docs, so students will write their essay, this is a take-home essay or an in-class essay. They'll come back to it, write a self-evaluation. Alongside it, underneath that self-evaluation paragraph will be the rubric where they'll highlight and mark what they think they did well. And for me, the first thing I start with is self-evaluation, because I tell the students, hey, I read so many essays, I may miss it. I may miss the mark, or I may be tired. But their self-evaluation helps guide my reading. It helps me understand what they think they did well on. And so then I can approve. I can ask certain questions based on what they think they did well and based on what they think they may need for the next essay. Now, will I sometimes leave a comment about their self-evaluation? Yeah. With all my students writing, I try to highlight lines where I think they're very telling, they're very creative, or it's very well articulated in both their essay and their self-evaluation. It's just another way of me showing that I see you, I recognize you in your writing, I am reading, I'm not just glossing over this. And if I haven't said so, grading for me is just an extension of a dialogue with a kid. It's just an extension of community building. It's just an extension of getting to know a student through their writing. And not just them as a student, but them as a person and how they see the world. So it becomes this cool offline dialogue with my comments in the margins as well as their self-evaluations. And so by the end of a semester, you get this really cool catalog of essays and self-evaluations, which become references for students to plan out future goals, for students to reflect on, and for students to see their progress. So these self-evaluations become a part of this self-progress report that the students and I can check out as we evaluate the improvement of their writing throughout the year. And the rubrics become a sort of contract too. It becomes this mutual reference point for us, so the students don't feel like I'm cheating them. They don't feel like I'm pulling grades out of nowhere. As far as grades go, I also try to make sure, and this part's tricky, of course, there are high-end papers, and of course there are low-end papers, but I know that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I don't want a kid to feel like they've got to write like this person or that person to achieve whatever grade they want. I want to try to evaluate them based on what I know about them and based on what they say in their self-evaluations. So I try to be equitable in that sense, and knowing that, all right, this kid really wants to work on their thesis, so I try to put more emphasis in giving feedback on their thesis statements versus a student who may have amazing diction, amazing sentence variety, however their thinking is still lacking. A lot of big words, but they may be empty or just really vague or just fluffy. So I try to make sure the feedback is obviously individualized and customized, because I want to see the kid progress at their rate and based on what they need as a student and as a writer. In regards to getting to the actual essay, I try to limit myself to maybe 3 to 4 comments per essay. Of course, I will highlight things in their self-evaluation. Of course, I will highlight stuff on their rubric. Of course, I will highlight things in their actual essay. But I try to make sure the feedback is short and sweet and it's operational, meaning they can use it. And it's not just my commentary on their entire essay, but I try to be thoughtful about the questions and comments I leave, because I want them to try to internalize those questions. So for example, I'll say, how do you know? To get them to really elaborate on their reasoning and their logic and understanding the logical train of thought in their writing from sentence to sentence. Or I'll write things such as, so what? And I want these questions to become internal questions for them to ask in their head. So when they're writing, they can go through their own writing and ask themselves, so what? How do I know? What was I trying to say? What's the main takeaway here? I really want them to internalize these really basic questions to improve their metacognition and their self-awareness and their self-evaluation around their writing. Because I think sometimes as teachers, we can write a million comments and put their paper dripping with red when I used to hand grade their papers. And then I ask myself, would that be useful for them? Is that useful for them? And sometimes I ask them about the process and what they want to see with how I grade. I try to get their feedback, because some years I've had some students who wanted feedback on every paragraph, every line, and I try to honor that. Other years I've had it to where I'm like, all right, here are the 3 things I want to tell them that I'm looking for in their writing, so they know, so I can make the feedback that much more tailored. Because if I leave a comment on every little thing, it can become overwhelming to the point where kids just won't read the feedback, and it defeats the purpose of feedback. As I'm reading through, I'm looking for reasons to upgrade a student, not to downgrade them, based on their self-evaluation and based on what I know about them as writers. I don't want to nitpick everything and say, see, this is why you should get a B or a C. But if a student thinks they got a B plus or an A minus, I try to read their self-evaluation, see what they noted and what they said were the reasoning behind why they thought they should earn that grade. And so as I'm reading, I can confirm, I can ask questions in the margins, just let them know I'm trying to honor your feedback and honor what you thought about your own writing, as opposed to over-influencing with my thinking around your essay. And again, I go back to setting routines for grading. Within that hour, or after that hour, I should say, I stop grading and give myself a mental break, because I want to try to give kids a clear mind, a fresh set of eyes as I'm grading each paper. Because you read so many essays, it can be really monotonous and repetitive, and you feel like they're saying the exact same thing, then you may end up downgrading students. Unfortunately, if they're on the tail end of your pile of papers to grade versus students who got you when you were fresh at the very beginning of that hour or the very beginning of the grading process. So give yourself the breaks, give yourself time to kind of breathe in between essays. Find your own rhythm and own routine. For me, on my good days where I'm really locked in, I can maybe grade 10 essays. Essays range from 2 to 3 pages, double space. I can maybe grade 10 of those in an hour and feel like I was fresh. But then I have to take a 10, 15, 20, 30-minute break in between before I look at the next set. And you're probably thinking, wow, you are going to eat up so much time. I know. I try to grade early in the morning or late at night when I feel really energized. During the day, I try to go outside, I try to run errands, I try to do other things that maximize the sunlight and leave the morning and the night for me to do work when I'm kind of inside anyway. And yeah, that's just a part of the grading process. It takes time if you want to do it. It's not about doing it right, but if you want to do it in a way that's tailored and conducive to a kid's individual learning and their growing, then you really want to be thoughtful about what you're writing and making sure that it speaks to that student's gifts, that student's talents, that student's needs and areas of improvement. And that takes time. You just got to get to know your students with each piece of writing, whether that be a journal reflection, whether that be a quick write, whether that be a opening quick writing class, whether that be a formal in-class writing or an out-of-class essay. I like to use everything as an assessment and everything as an opportunity for me to get to know a student as a writer and as a person. Right? And of course, some papers are weighted differently in terms of grades, but they're all important to me because I want to get to know a student. Right? It's awesome when you can hear a student's voice and see how it's developed and matured through the year or the 8 months you've been with them. It's awesome to see how honest they can be in their self-evaluation. It's awesome to see how thoughtful and analytical they can be in their self-evaluations, in which they will tell you, here's how you can read between the lines of my essay. Here's where I went below the surface. Here's where I took a really big risk. And I'm really, really, really big on pushing my kids to take some risk in their writing. I tell my students, all my students, don't play it safe. This is a great time. You're a sophomore, you're a freshman, you're a 7th grader, you're an 8th grader. This is a great time to stretch yourself, to see what you're made of. Don't cheat the workout. Don't give me the essay that you know is comfortable and safe. I want to see you push yourself so you know how to sweat. So then when you are tasked with something really, really challenging, you develop that muscle memory, you develop that stamina, you've developed that resilience, that grit, that endurance to push yourself to really go below the surface in your thinking and in your writing. Lastly, I'll say this in regards to the grammar and the punctuation. I don't want to be the grammar or the language police. I think it's really tempting to be that way as an English teacher. I tell the students, I understand that a lot of us have grammar trauma. So I try to say that in the first part of the year, I'm really looking at your ideation, how you're thinking. Not necessarily the mechanics of your writing and how big your words are, but are you being clear and do you have big ideas that you've kind of broken down and made them easy to understand? Now, the second half of the year, we get into the mechanics in addition to the writing, the thinking and the writing coming together. But I don't want to stifle or make them self-conscious to the point where they're paralyzed in the fall because I'm looking at every comment, every period. If anything, I want to unlock their thinking and push them and make them feel confident as writers and thinkers. And then the second half of the year, while they're confident, we can really hone in on polishing their style because now they've already developed a thinking, a voice, but now it's about style. And that takes time. It may not happen in that 1 year, but I want students to feel like they are confident thinkers and writers. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the biggest vocabulary or the most complex sentences. I hope they have a variety of sentences, and I hope that we're doing enough reading and looking at enough models of writing where they can start to pick and choose and take here and there to build their repertoire of sentence structure, paragraph organization, and just ideation strategies in terms of how they brainstorm and how they force themselves to look at different topics through different lenses and different angles. That's just a little insight on how I grade. Hopefully this has been informative for you. And lastly, why does this matter to me as a black male educator? I did have a couple of teachers who didn't read my writing, and it just really burned me to my core. So now here I am on the other end of that table as a person that has the opportunity to grade. I want to make sure kids feel seen, recognized, and not necessarily validated, but I want them to feel proud of their own work without me putting a grade to validate their awesomeness. I want them to feel good and proud of the work they produce, right? Because a B to one student may feel like the A plus versus another student, a B may just feel like a B. But overall, I want my young people to walk away feeling really confident about their writing, their thinking, and feeling like they can go out in the real world and communicate. Because that's what it's about. It's about communication. It's about critical thinking at the end of the day. So hopefully you've enjoyed my little grading session with some insights. I'm D. White, founder of JustBlackThoughts.com. Peace. Hey, it's D. White, founder of JustBlackThoughts.com. If you haven't done so, hit subscribe on YouTube. Follow me at The Other English Teacher on Instagram and YouTube. Peace.